Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on 7 tricky interview questions on list. So if some of you have joined us in the last few sessions, 2-3 sessions we have had around collections framework. We had one introducing what is collections framework, what is collections class. We had one around linked list and we had one around vectors and stack, right? So this Monday session, I thought I would do a tricky question session around the same, the list portion of the collections that we have covered so far, right? And again, there would be a 7 o'clock session continuing to the collection series after this. So I hope you all are in good health. I hope you all had a great weekend and you are all ready to jump onto the session again, jump onto the technical stuff again. So let me see who all have joined. Vijay, Anki, Mahesh, hi everyone, good evening. Anil says, tell us about how to crack CoCubes. Anil, if you're preparing for CoCubes, all the best, and some tips and tricks around CoCubes, I guess we can take up a session on that, so I'll keep that in mind. Shola says, hi Madhav Rapu. Bhavesh is asking, what is different between interface and abstract? Please explain with example. Okay, interface and abstract we have already discussed. I think you're referring to what is the difference between an interface and an abstract class, how both of them are different from each other, right? So we have already discussed that in one of our previous live sessions. Maybe you can go back and check that out. But other than that, if we have time in this slot today, 6 to 7 slot, once I'm done with these 7 tricky interview questions, which of course I expect all of you to answer since we have discussed array list, linked list, stack, vector, everything, and I'm assuming most of you joined those sessions, the last 3 sessions. But even otherwise, these are good chilled out questions that you might get in any interview or any written exam around collections. So they cover the very basic of collection, but in a slightly tricky way. So instead of asking you a question directly, what's an array list, there are questions that would turn you around. Like instead of holding the ear like this, you have to turn your hand around and hold the ear another way, right? So it's slightly tricky, but don't worry if you know the basic concepts, if you know the basic outline of what a list is, what a collection is, how the inheritance hierarchy works, like collections, whatever methods are there in collections, they're all inherited by list, right? So list has those methods along with the additional methods that it introduces. Again, list has array list, linked list, vectors and stack. So each of these have their own individual implementation methods along with whatever they have inherited from collections and list. So that's the base of each and every collection interface that we have, either it be list or a set or a map, right? So going by that very base that we have developed so far in the last 3 sessions, we'll continue on these 7 questions and then we'll move on to whatever questions that you have so far, right? Like abstract classes and interface. Bishwajit is joined. Hi Bishwajit. Hi Harish. Hi Nishant. Krish says, can we expect a Hadoop map reduce topics from your channel? Krish, we are not yet looking into a Hadoop session. Could be quite an advanced session for those of you who are not aware of Hadoop. So what I basically try is cover topics that most of you are interested in based on your own feedback. So whatever questions you put through in these sessions, that we want collections or we want generics, etc., etc. Based on that, we try to curate the sessions that is helpful to most of you. But Hadoop is a very nice and interesting topic, a very trending topic in the IT industry. So maybe down the line, we'll have a session on that. Palagani says, is there any possibility to launch TalentSprint for core companies also? Not for IT only. So by core companies, you mean what? We have TalentSprint launched for CTET TET programs. We have TalentSprint launched for banking programs and IT programs. Apart from that, what are you looking for? Nayak and Ayushi also joined. I'm good, Nayak. I hope you are also doing well. You had a nice weekend, I hope. And on that note, let me just switch onto the questions. Let's start off with the tricky questions. and let's see how much you got during the last 3 sessions. All right, so here is the first one out there for you. How does the size of array list increase automatically? Now, when I was talking about array list, many of you on the channel asked me, how does the size increase automatically? So we know that, array list, the difference between an typical array and an array list is that for array list, the size increases automatically. You don't have to worry about, okay, now the size is full, I cannot add any more elements into the array list. But how does that size increase automatically? How does that function? Any thoughts on this? I would wait for a few seconds for you to answer if anyone has any thoughts on this, and then we'll continue with the actual code. I'll show you the code, how it works. Satya meanwhile is asking, I have 58% in 12th. Am I eligible for placement drive in my college? Satya, placement drive in colleges vary from college to college, as well as the criteria whether they are looking for a 60 plus or a 70 plus or a 50 plus, or there's no criteria for 12th percentage. Also depends from college to college. If you have been doing good through your semesters, this 12th percentage might not even be a criteria for the college to check. But I would suggest go talk to your head of the department or your professors to actually check what the criteria is. They would be the best ones to help you on this. Yeah, Madhav Rapu, I think you have requested for a SQL session before as well. I think once we wrap off on this collections sessions, the next up we might take SQL. Amit Arya says malloc function. Amit, malloc is not the function that we use while we work with collections. It allocates in malloc and calloc, and all these functions are, yes, of course, used for allocating and deallocating memory, but they are not in relation to collections. So remember, we discussed points around, we have an ensure capacity function that checks whether the capacity can be increased, right? So if we say ensure capacity and we give some number, the capacity of array list increases. So based on that, can you think of some logic how this array list size increment takes place? The one simple thing is that whenever we want to add an element to an array list, we call the add function. Now, whenever you write a program in Java, let's say you are using Eclipse, right? If you highlight on this add function and press Ctrl Enter, you will go to the definition, you will go to the array list class, and you'll see all the function definitions, in which one is this add function. Correct? So what is the add function doing is it ensures that the internal capacity increases by the size. So let's say the current capacity is 10 and we are trying to add the 11th element to the array list that we have, right? Now the internal processing, what happens is that this array list, whatever array it is referring to, it checks that the 10th element is already full, and now the user is trying to enter 11th element for which there is no space in the current list. So what it internally does, this add method internally does is it increases the capacity of the array. So it ensures that the capacity internal is increased, and once that is increased, it adds that new data element that you are trying to insert into that increased space. And once everything else is done, now both of these are also method of their own, correct? So once every method functions properly, it finally returns true and your element is added to the list. Now one more function that you should keep in mind while doing this addition of array list is that this ensure capacity internal is a very important function. So when you say add an element to array list, this ensure capacity internally is called. Now you won't see that happening in the program because you have not written the code in the program. In the program, what you will write is, let's say you have created an array list of string. Let's call it dummy. Okay, new array list. Fine. Now what you're trying to do is you're trying to add elements into this dummy, some xyz elements, and you keep adding these elements 10 times. Now when you call every time you call this add method, it will go and execute this add method present in the array list class. Now when this add method is executed present in the array list class, it will every time check whether the capacity is available to add. Once it is not, it will increment it, call the ensure capacity internal method, increment it, and then add that element at the new incremented place. So if at all at any point of time when you are referring to array list, that array list size increases, right, by default it increases, and user doesn't have to worry about. And if your interviewer asks why the user doesn't have to worry about it, how it increases automatically, how can something happen automatically? So the logic is that the add function that is present in the array list internally calls the ensure capacity internal function, which in turn checks whether the size is available for us to add more elements or not. If it is available, we add the element. If it is not, we increment the size of the array, create a new array, copy the current contents into the new array, and then add it to the list, right? That is a simple process of how the list incrementation or the size incrementation takes place. And this is for everything, not just for array list. This is also for linked list or vectors or stack, anything that is dynamically increasing. This is what is happening in the background. You don't see it in your program, but these functions run in the background to ensure that your list is dynamically increasing, right? Now I have a few questions from you guys. Anil says core companies in the sense for engineering branches like ECE, MedTech. All right, I think the core companies have interview or let's say written examinations for which you guys have to prepare for quant and English, etc. There's a set defined syllabus for entrance into all these companies, and apart from that it will be quite technical. Like a company like Qualcomm or Honeywell would ask you details around ECE that you would have gone through your semesters. So I would suggest that apart from the basic logical stuff or the quant stuff or whatever the programming questions, not the programming questions, sorry, whatever the quant or the English set pattern is there for all these companies, apart from them, I think if you brush up through your semester courses properly, you don't need any extra prep to appear for an interview in these companies, because all they check for is that your knowledge of the subject, whatever you have gone through during the semesters, is good enough, solid enough for you to start as a fresher in either of these companies like Qualcomm or Bosch, right? Bishwajit is saying a new array of greater size is created. The old array is copied to new array using arrays.copyof, and the new array is assigned to the existing array. Bishwajit, okay, that is the copy definition of what actually happens. Like arrays.copyof function is called. Yes, it is called, but where it is called? How did you reach to arrays.copyof? So that is the last step in the hierarchy of what the process is happening, right? Let's say you call the add function. That add function in turns check whether the size is right or wrong. If the size is not available for you to insert the element, that add function calls the ensure internal capacity function. Now that ensure capacity function at the very end, this is the very last line of the ensure capacity function, that does, after increasing the size, creating a new array, transferring the last step is that the contents of the old array are transferred to this new array using the method that you have mentioned, arrays.copyof. So once that is now copied, this new array list that is created with the new increased size is then finally returned back, right? That is what is happening. So yes, it is copy off, but then there is a lot of processing that's happening in the middle till you reach copy off. Copy off is the very end of whatever has happened. There have been checks to see whether the size is okay or not. Then you ensure that the size is increasing by creating a new array, etc., and then finally copy the data. Correct? So yes, that is there, but if you explain the whole process to your interviewer when you are sitting in the interview, it makes a great impact that you are aware of the whole chain that is happening. You're not just, cramming the answer from some platform and then munching it out, right? You know that how the logic is working, how one function from one class, the program that you created, how it is calling the function of array list, how that is calling another function in array list, etc. So it shows that you have a detailed understanding of what actually is happening in the background, right? So remember, whenever you answer a question like this or any other question like this that involves multiple functions, try to break it down and explain in as much detail as possible of how it is going from one function to another, what is the function returning, and finally, yes, arrays.copyof function is called to copy the contents, right? So that leaves a very good impression of you on the interviewer. So Madhav Rapu said, yes, we can increase the size by calling some methods like add. Yeah, add is the method that we call, but how does add work? That is the process that I hope you have understood now, Madhav Rapu. Satish is asking, can you say how to attempt an interview? Okay, how to attempt an interview is a fairly simple question. If it is a non-technical interview and you are being asked questions around data algorithm or problem solving or logical reasoning, there are certain companies that do first round of interviews on these topics. So the idea behind taking these this first round of interview is to check how good you are at problem solving. Now, whether you arrive at the right solution or not is not their concern. They are more interested in what approach you are taking to solve the problem, whether your approach is right or wrong. Correct? So once you are cracking questions like this, which are not technical, they are more of logical reasoning or problem solving or algorithm writing, make sure that the step-by-step that you are taking to solve your problem is very, very clear in your head. So this is the problem, you want to reach to the solution. If you have 3 steps, make it very, very clear that, okay, if I do this, I'll get this. Then if I do a series of steps, I'll get this, I'll reach to this second stage. And then finally, if I do 2 more steps, that will make me reach to the final solution. Now you might go wrong in 1 or 2 of the steps somewhere in the middle, but the whole idea is that, okay, you have understood the complete picture, the complete problem, and then you're moving on towards the solution, right? So make sure that you do that. And if it is a proper technical interview where you are asked questions around let's say Java, if you are attempting in Java interview and you are asked questions around Java, then make sure that whatever you are telling to the interviewer, you are very, very clear about it. Don't make assumptions like, I think this is what will happen, or I think this is what this function does, or I'm assuming this is where it goes. If you don't know anything, any topic in the whole language, if you're not aware of, make it very, very clear that, sorry boss, I don't know this. I will go back and prepare for this, but as of now, I'm not aware of this particular topic. But other than this, if you ask me questions on this, I know them very well. So they might give you programs to write, they might give you a computer system, make you sit there and ask you to run a few programs. Make sure that your coding or programming practice is very, very clear of whatever topics that you say you know. That leaves a very good impression if you have clarity of what you know and what you don't know, right? So that is one thing that you can focus on when you are attempting for a technical interview. All right. Which program will faster in C or in C++ language? Depends on what kind of program you are looking for, what the data set is, what the output is. There are so many parameters involved in judging whether a program will run faster in one language or another. So you just cannot, decide between the two languages like that. Shubham is saying, I thought the live streaming starts at 7 p.m. Did I miss something? Shubham, the live streaming for the collection framework will start at 7 p.m. This is our Monday session that happens every alternate Monday. So this is from 6 to 7, and I'll be back at 7 with the collections live session. So you haven't missed on something. In this session, we are just taking a look at some tricky questions around list. Hi Sanam. Satya is asking, have you worked for any company in past? I have worked for 2 companies before this. Infosys for around 2.5 years, and then Oracle for a good 3 years. Do you know about system Verilog concepts? What is destructor? Rudra, that topic would be very offbeat right now because the audience is more around Java. So let's stick to that for now. Satya is asking, best way to learn Java. Practice. Download Java on your system, download Eclipse on your system, take a list of some random programs of the internet, basic beginner programs of the internet, and start solving those questions on your own. Write the code on your own. Once you are aware of the syntax, you'll get a hang of how to approach to the problems, how to solve the problems, and that will make it very, very easy and very, very interesting way to learn not just Java, any programming language. Ambati is asking, which topic must be focused for interview? Basic Java, if you are appearing for a Java interview, Ambati. Anything related to basics of Java is what you should focus on. If you have written in your resume anything apart from that, like let's say you mentioned that you know HTML also or CSS also, make sure that you have a very good understanding of the topics that you mention in your resume. If you don't know something, don't add it on your resume just to show off that you know 4 or 5 or 7 different languages. Stick to the basic what you know and make sure that you know it in and out. I request to give C program concept interview questions on C program interview questions with video. Kanu, we have a session already on C programming questions. If you go back to the channel, you'll find a playlist called Frequently Asked Programming Questions, right? In that playlist, we have many interview questions that are frequently asked around C. And if you are looking for any specific question to be solved on that series, you can maybe drop a comment on any of the videos and we'll take that up, right? Cool. So moving on to the next problem that we have. Array list versus linked list. Now quickly, if you can give me a few points around the difference between array list and linked list. Now, most of the students confuse around this because they kind of seem to be doing the same thing. They both are ordered list. They both can increase in size automatically. They both allow random access of elements, right? But how are they different from each other? The array list and linked list, what are the points on which they differ from each other? And basically there is one thing that differentiate, like if you want to do this, you go for array list, but if you want to do that, you go for linked list. So what is that one differentiating factor between the two that lets you decide, okay, this I will use in this situation and linked list I'll use in this situation? MVC concept, I have already taken a note of Mother Bapu. I think you mentioned this in the last session as well, that you want a session on MVC concept. So I'll maybe club it along with some session once we are done with this collection framework series. How many days is required to learn any programming language? Well, I have seen videos and sessions around learning a programming language in 3 hours, but those sessions are like very intense. They'll just walk you through everything, give you a brush up of everything in 3 hours. And then there are programs, there are sessions that stage through months, right? So the session that we run in our company, TalentSprint, is a 3-month session where we in detail talk about C and Java and HTML, CSS, basically all the basics of what you need to be prepared on to appear for any interview, right? So that is a 3-month long session, but that covers a lot of topics, and not just the session that gives you what to do, but also the practice sessions included, in which students write programs on their own, create projects on their own. So considering that, I would say I think a week or 2 at the max is enough with a good preparation to learn any programming language. Shubham is asking how Java uses top to bottom approach. Java uses top to bottom approach in the sense that we start with a program, a problem, and then we break it down into the nitty-gritties. Okay, this is the bigger picture, and now there are 7 steps involved in solving this problem, right? So we have, let's say, a method, correct, which in turn calls method 1, method 2 and method 3. And finally, combining the output of all these methods in whatever way these return their outputs, we finally get the output for our method. So we took one problem, right? We broke it down into 3 problems, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and each method deals with one particular sort of problem. That is why we use methods to do our program. Now if this particular method is required to solve another problem also, let's say method X needs this, you can directly call this. You don't have to rewrite that particular piece of code, right? That how it helps in Java. Now this again, method 1, method 2, method 3 combined will give you the return output. So this is top down. You have one problem which in turn uses the output of 3 problems to give you the output. Now this method 2 that you have could again in turn call 2 more functions. So you break the problem from top to bottom and then use the output to give you the final result. That is how Java uses top down approach. Alright. So coming back to array list versus linked list, the one differentiator point that there is between the two is what do you use when you want to access the data and when you want to insert and delete data. So when in your program, data accessing is more important. You constantly need to check in your list what element is at which position, what element is at XYZ position, right? In that case, when these kind of operations are more, in that case we go for array list. But if insertions and deletions are more, if you have to constantly keep on adding some data or other in the list or keep on deleting some data or other from the list, in those cases we go for linked list. That is the differentiating factor between array list and linked list. All right. Now moving on, how do you copy one array list to another? What are the ways in which you can copy one array list to another? What are the functions that you can use to copy an array list to another? Mahesh is asking what is the exact syntax of class and object in Java. Mahesh, the simple syntax is you say class followed by the name of the class, curly braces. Now inside this you can give data members or methods, close the braces. That is your class right there for you. And if you have to create an object, you say the name of the class followed by the object name, that is obj1 is equal to new, again name of the class, and that's it. That will give you object 1 for this class, right? Name class, whatever it is, let's say student. So for the student class, you just created the object obj1. That is the simple syntax for class and object. Exception handling, Sai Krish is suggesting, okay, we'll get that also added to the list. Exception handling. Array list has consecutive memory locations, which is not in linked list. Yeah, but that's true that array list has consecutive memory location, while in linked list what can happen is you have some location here xyz, and then the link pointer points to some random location in the memory abc. They are not consecutive memory locations, but you still have the pointer that is directly pointing to the next element, right? Madharapu, linked list is also not thread safe. Both these are not thread safe. If you want them to be thread safe, you have to explicitly synchronize them. Array list is used for synchronized and linked list for concurrent. That's also not correct. Both of them can be used for either synchronized or concurrent implementation, depending on how you want to use them. If we know how much memory is required, then we use array. If we don't know how much memory to allocate, then we use linked list. So Ambati, you gave me the difference between array and linked list, where we were looking for the difference between array list and linked list. Hi Shravani, good evening. Sai Teja is asking how many languages required to learn for a fresher job. Well, there's no upper limit. The more you know, the better you are, the more advantage you have from the rest of the crowd. Let's say if there is an interview and two of you are appearing, you know only one language while the other guy appearing along with you knows 3 languages, so obviously he gets advantage over you, right? But what you have to do is you have to make sure that whatever you know it very well, plus you should be enthusiastic enough to learn more. It should be clearly visible in your interview that yes, you are keen on learning more, you are keen on improving your knowledge set, right? We had plus to combine 2 strings. Then what is the use of concatenation? So I'm sure you are referring to string concatenation, right? See, plus to combine 2 strings is used when you write the system.out.println statements, right? There you say, let's say hello, and then if you have to print some message, you say plus and then you give the message, where the message is like already declared and initialized, right? That is how you use plus. Now string concatenation allows you to concatenate 2 strings, allows you to increase the size, decrease the size. All those operations are part of the concatenation process. Apil says cloning is one of the methods. Yes, cloning is one of the ways in which we can copy one array list to another. In Java, frameworks like Struts, Hibernate or Spring, which one I choose to learn first and which is better for job? I think you can maybe start with Hibernate or Spring, either one of those. They are easier to pick up, and I think they are more in relevance and more in demand at the point of time. But the key remember that the technologies keep changing, new technologies keep coming, so you might have to evolve with time. Maybe Java becomes irrelevant down the line if any new faster performing programming languages is developed, right? But for starters, as of now, between the options that you have given me, I think you can go on with Hibernate. Start off with Hibernate. Shubham Patil says copy or clone. That's right, we have two functions, copy and clone. Let me show you the syntax of both of them. So if you say copy, that is simple, collections dot copy, and then you provide the to list, let's say array list 2, and you want to copy array list 1 into it. So array list 1, both of them you provide as parameter, and you call this copy function of the collections class. Remember, this is a class that's a utility class that provide you with functions to operate on different collections. So when you have to do this copy of one array list to another, you call this copy function of the collections class, right? Another way, which is rightly mentioned by you guys, is the clone. So you simply say array list string. Let's say we are creating a new array list now which we want to clone. So say array list 2, right, is equals to array list 1 dot clone. Now what this will do is it will clone this array list 1 into array list 2. Now if you print both of these, array list 1 and array list 2, both will give the same data inside, right? So that is how copy and clone are used. Fine. Jumping on to the next question, what is the best way to reverse a list in collection? What is the easiest way to reverse a list in collection? This is also a method that we have seen, so if you guys remember, this should be a very quick answer. Bhushan, you are asking that if you have an array of size 5, and I'm assuming that you are trying to say, what you're trying to say is this 5 elements are already inserted to your array, right? And it is full, and now you are saying that you want to insert an element between 2 and 3 position, element between 2 and 3. So definitely total array size will be modified to 6. The total array size will not be modified to 6. You will get an error that would say that array index out of bound. If the array is already initialized and 5 elements you have already put in the array, it is full. Now if you try to add any more element into the array, no matter at what position you want to add it, it will give you an error. Arava is saying it is, instead of learning a bunch of languages, it is better to work on logic. If I totally agree with you, Arava, even if you are learning just one language, logic always helps. That clearly shows that your problem solving skills are really good, and whatever language comes down the line, it is merely about the syntax of the language. So if you are good with problem solving, if you are good with logical reasoning, if you are good with generating algorithms and logics, that they form the very base of any programming language that you would want to try. And if you're good at that, learning any programming language becomes fairly simple and easy. It's just a matter of syntax on top. Amit says value of method. Value of won't reverse the list. List iterator. Okay, so if you remember collections class that we discussed, right? I'll repeat again, which was a utility class which provides you with a number of functions that you can use to operate on collections. So one of the functions that was there in this class was reverse. You can directly simply call this function, say collections dot reverse, and then give your array list inside, and it will simply reverse your list in this one line of code. That's the easiest and the fastest way to reverse your list. Next up, how to convert array list to array of strings. So let's say you created an array list, right? AL1, which is a string list. Okay, and then you have added a few elements into this list. And so on, right? Now you want to convert this list AL1 into an array of strings. So this happens, conversion, fairly simple. You have array list, correct, new list that you created, and you added, let's say, one string to it, TalentSprint. Now all you have to do is call this toArray function on your array list. So you say array list dot toArray, and you convert it into a string array, add it to strarr. So you created a new string array called strarr, and you converted it to array list dot toArray using the dot toArray function, right? This is the simple. Now the size of this we have determined like this: string array list dot size. Call the dot size function to determine the size of our string array function. So this portion gives you the size, and this method toArray converts the elements into the string elements, right? Now let's say, what if we have to do it reverse? If we have to convert array of string into array list, how does that happen? So let's say we have string, some, let's say, word list, all right, and there are few elements in this array: XYZ, QST, some random elements in your array, right? And you want to convert this array into an array list. How do we do that? Simply start by creating a list. Let's say word list, and simply say arrays dot as list, and provide this array here. Let's call it array. So you have word array, which has some 3 elements in the array, and to convert it to a list, all you have to do is called arrays dot as list function and pass your array inside. This will give you a list containing the similar set of elements. All right. Next, how to find the middle of a linked list. Now this is very interesting program, and let me explain it to you quickly. I've just written a function middle element that will calculate the middle of the linked list, correct? Now in your linked list, let me just quickly draw a linked list. Let's say we have these many elements, and this points to next, this points to next, this points to next, and then this points to next. Okay, right? So we created 2 pointers. One is the slow pointer that we initialize to head, and one is the fast pointer that we also initialize to head. So head is the first element of our list. Now both slow pointer, let's say SP, and fast pointer FP are initialized to head. Now what we are doing inside our if condition, that is this. Very, very simple. So how do you crack what is the middle of the element? You take 2 pointers pointing to the head, and in every iteration you move the slow pointer by 1 node and the fast pointer by 2 nodes, right? Now by the time fast pointer reaches your end of the string, your slow pointer will only be halfway. Okay, let's say if you are taking one step at a time and your friend is taking two steps at a time, that is how you are covering some distance. By the time your friend covers the entire distance, you will only be midway because you are moving at half the speed. Similar logic is going on here. So you initialize slow pointer, you initialize fast pointer to the first. Fast pointer will move at double the pace than the slow pointer, so that by the time fast pointer reaches the end, slow pointer would give you the middle element. Same thing we have done in the code. See, if head not equals to null, which is true in our case, we go inside this if condition. Fast pointer is not equal to null, true. Fast pointer dot next not equal to null, true. What we have done is fast pointer is equals to fast pointer and call the dot next twice. So fp dot next, fp comes here, then again fp dot next, fp comes here, correct? And slow pointer moves one time, so sp came here. So as you can see, in the one iteration that we just had, fp moved by 2 nodes while sp just moved by 1 node. Now again, we'll repeat this iteration. This will go inside a while loop, right? This will go inside a while loop, or instead this is inside the while loop. So head not equal to null, these two conditions. Now fast pointer is somewhere here. Again check these two conditions. Fast pointer not equal to null, true. And fast pointer dot next not equal to null, we still have a next, that is also true. Again go inside. Fast pointer will move again 2 paces. So dot next it comes here, dot next it comes here. Now in second iteration, fast pointer is at the last and slow pointer will come at this location, correct? Every iteration, fast pointer move 2 steps, slow pointer move 1 step. Now if you go back to the while loop for third iteration, this condition will become false because there is no next element to it. So when this condition becomes false, we get out of our while loop and we finally print the middle element is slow pointer dot data, which actually if you see is the middle element. So 2, third element, which is the slow pointer at the end of iteration, is our middle element, which we are printing at the bottom. Simple logic, right? As you can see, clearly understandable from this example. If your friend is taking 2 steps and you are just taking 1, by the time your friend covers the entire distance, you will be midway. So same thing we did here. We made the friend, that is the fast pointer, move 2 steps in every iteration and slow pointer move just 1 step. So by the time fast pointer reaches the end, slow pointer would be midway, and then we can print that value. All right. Next up, vector versus stack. This also we discussed, but what is the difference? Now this difference is very easy to say, so let me just say it myself. I'll not bother you with this again. Vector and stack, the fundamental difference is vector is a list implementation, but the stack vector implementation is like this, normal list implementation, right? Stack implementation on the other hand is very different from any other list implementation because it works on the principle of first in first out, correct? So that is what makes stack different from a vector or a linked list or an array list. That every time you insert an element, it is a push operation. Every time you delete an element, it is a pop operation. And at any particular point of time in your stack implementation, you can operate only on this particular, the topmost data available in the stack. That's the fundamental difference between vector and stack. Okay. Okay, you guys have a few doubts on the previous question. Let me explain it to you again. So Mahesh says initially we don't have fast pointer dot next variable to enter into while loop. So Mahesh, see clearly, fast pointer, before we entered into the while loop, we initialized both fast and slow to the header.
So they both are pointing to the header before entering into the while loop, correct? Now when you enter into the while loop, it will check fast pointer is not equal to null, true, because fast pointer is pointing to the head. Fast pointer dot next is not equal to null, true, because there is a next element. And that is when, after checking both the conditions, it enters into the while loop for the first time. Okay, I hope I have answered your question here. Mother Rapu says, ma'am, can you explain find middle element of linked list once again? Okay, so what is happening is, we have this linked list, 5 elements, correct? Slow pointer pointing to first, fast pointer pointing to first. Now we continue iteration till fast pointer becomes null or fast pointer dot next becomes null. Alright, if either one of these become null, we stop our iteration. So in the sense, fast pointer, whenever it reaches the end of the list, we close our while loop. Okay, now till it reaches the end of the list, what we are doing is, we are incrementing fast pointer by 2 steps. Fast pointer dot next dot next. So every time an iteration happens, fast pointer moves by 2 steps, 1, 2. So after first iteration, fast pointer comes here, slow pointer moves by 1 step, so slow pointer comes here. Similarly, in the next iteration, fast pointer will move from here to 2 steps again, 1, 2. So fast pointer comes here, slow pointer moves 1 step, slow pointer comes here. Now when fast pointer reaches this element, fast pointer dot next not equal to null becomes true, right? So we exit out of our while loop, and when we exit out of our while loop, our slow pointer at that point of time gives us the middle element that is available. Alright, cool. And Madhav Rapu pointed out right. Let me rectify this. This is last in, first out. So whatever goes in last is the first to come out. That is how push pop works, right? Last in, first out. Alright, so that were 7 questions that I hope helped you to figure out what kind of questions are asked around linked list, array list, or list in general, what things you should be aware of. For example, one thing that is very clear is we use collections class, the utility collections class, a lot while working on collections. So whether you are working on list or array list or linked list, you'll use this class to use certain operations that are done faster while working on these classes, right? So make sure that you have a good understanding of collections class as well when you are talking about list or array list or any of these. Okay, Maheshri is asking, only we can use in node side only. Mahe, I am not able to clearly get your question. Maybe you can drop down your question, whatever your doubt is, in the comment on this video after the live session is done, and then I can reply back on your question in there. Okay, because right now I'm not very clear about what you're trying to ask here. Okay, so that was it. Those were the 7 tricky questions that I compiled of whatever we have discussed in collections so far. And in today's 7 o'clock session on collections, those of you who have not joined me, join me, because we are going to talk about sets, and it's going to be a very crisp, short, easy, interesting session. So I'll see you again at 7. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Bye bye and happy coding.